Jeffrey Epstein, the network that was never meant to be seen. In August 2019, a man died in a prison cell. Within hours, thousands of pages vanished. Names were sealed. Evidence disappeared. And the most powerful people on Earth exhaled in relief. Jeffrey Epstein didn't start as a monster. He started as a mystery. A college dropout who somehow became a mathematics teacher at one of Manhattan's most elite private schools. A man with no college degree teaching calculus to the children of New York's wealthiest families. It made no sense then. It makes even less sense now. But that's how it always worked with Epstein. Nothing about his rise added up. Nothing about his wealth could be traced. Nothing about his connections could be explained. In 1974, Epstein began teaching at the Dalton School on Manhattan's Upper East Side. He wore expensive suits. Drove nice cars. For a teacher's salary, he lived remarkably well. At Dalton, he met the children of power. He learned their names. Their families. Their secrets. One of those families would change his life forever. Alan Greenberg, the CEO of Bear Stearns, one of Wall Street's most powerful investment banks, had a connection to Dalton. In 1976, Epstein left teaching and walked straight into Bear Stearns. No finance degree. No experience. No explanation for how a 23-year-old math teacher became a trader at one of the most exclusive firms in America. He shouldn't have gotten through the door. But he did. By 1981, Epstein was gone from Bear Stearns. Not fired. Not disgraced. Simply gone. He started his own firm. J. Epstein & Company. A financial management company that, according to Epstein, only accepted clients with a minimum of $1 billion in assets. $1 billion. Most wealth managers spend decades building reputations to attract clients with that kind of money. Epstein did it almost overnight. He claimed to manage fortunes for billionaires, foreign leaders, and powerful families. He claimed to operate from a mysterious island in the Caribbean and an estate in New Mexico and a mansion in Manhattan. But no one could ever confirm who his clients actually were. No financial disclosures. No public portfolios. No paper trail showing where his money came from or how he made it. The Securities and Exchange Commission had no record of major transactions. Financial journalists couldn't find his billionaire clients. When pressed, Epstein would smile and say his business was structured for absolute secrecy. Confidentiality was the product he sold. By the 1990s, Epstein owned a $77 million mansion in Manhattan, the largest private residence in New York City. He owned a private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. He owned a ranch in New Mexico, a mansion in Palm Beach, an apartment in Paris, a fleet of jets and helicopters. Conservative estimates put his wealth at $500 million. Some believed it was far more. But where did it come from? That question haunted journalists for decades. It haunts investigators still. What we know is this. Epstein didn't just collect money. He collected people. Powerful people. Presidents and princes. Scientists and celebrities. Nobel Prize winners and prime ministers. He hosted them at his homes. Flew them on his private jets. Introduced them to each other. Photographed them together. He built a network. And at the center of that network was a secret so dark that when it finally surfaced, it should have destroyed everyone connected to him. It didn't. The first cracks appeared in 2005. A woman in Palm Beach, Florida, reported to police that her 14-year-old stepdaughter had been paid $300 to give a massage to a wealthy man. The girl said she'd been taken to a mansion. That the man had touched her inappropriately. That she'd been told to bring other girls. Younger girls. The Palm Beach Police Department began investigating. What they found was a machine. Not one victim. Dozens. Not one incident. Hundreds. Girls recruited from high schools, shopping malls, trailer parks. Offered $200 or $300 to give a massage to a rich man. Told it was legitimate work. Told to bring friends. Once inside Epstein's mansion, the girls were led to a room filled with photographs of naked women. A massage table sat in the center. Epstein would enter wearing only a towel. The massage would begin. Then the abuse. Some girls were 14. Some were 13. Some were 12. And when it was over, they were handed cash and told to recruit others. A pyramid scheme built on the bodies of children. The Palm Beach police identified 40 potential victims. They built a case. They prepared a federal indictment that could have sent Epstein to prison for life. Then something happened that no one can fully explain. Alexander Acosta, the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida, took over the case. Acosta had a reputation as a tough prosecutor. But in Epstein's case, something changed. Instead of a federal trial, Acosta's office negotiated a secret plea deal. Epstein would plead guilty to 2 state charges. Solicitation of prostitution. As if these were adult women selling services, not children being raped. The sentence was 13 months in county jail. Not federal prison. County jail. And even then, Epstein would be allowed work release 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. He would sleep in jail and spend his days in a private office in West Palm Beach. The deal included something even more stunning. Non-prosecution agreements for all named and unnamed co-conspirators. Anyone who helped Epstein. Anyone who recruited for him. Anyone who participated. All of them granted immunity. And the deal was sealed. Hidden from the victims. Hidden from the public. Years later, when asked why he agreed to such a lenient deal, Acosta would say something chilling. I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence. That this was above my pay grade. Above his pay grade. A United States attorney, one of the most powerful prosecutors in America, told to back off because Epstein was connected to something bigger. What intelligence? Whose intelligence? Why was a serial child predator protected by people whose job was to stop him? No one has ever answered those questions on the record. Epstein served 11 months. Most of it spent outside the jail. When he was released, he was required to register as a sex offender. But nothing else changed. He still had his mansions. His island. His jets. His powerful friends. And according to later reports, he still had access to girls. For a decade, the story disappeared. Buried under sealed files and non-disclosure agreements. The victims were silenced. Paid off. Threatened with legal action if they spoke. The world forgot about Jeffrey Epstein. But some people didn't. In November 2018, a series of investigative reports surfaced. The Miami Herald published a project called Perversion of Justice. Reporter Julie Brown spent months tracking down Epstein's victims. Women now, but girls when it happened. They told their stories. They described the abuse. They named names. And they asked the question no one in power wanted to answer. Why was Jeffrey Epstein protected? The public pressure became unbearable. In July 2019, federal prosecutors in New York arrested Epstein. This time, the charges were severe. Sex trafficking of minors. Conspiracy. If convicted, he faced 45 years in prison. Epstein was denied bail. Too dangerous. Too much of a flight risk. He was placed in the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan. A federal facility designed to hold high-risk prisoners awaiting trial. For the first time in his life, Jeffrey Epstein couldn't buy his way out. The world waited for the trial. Victims prepared to testify. Journalists compiled lists of names connected to Epstein. Flight logs from his private jet. Photos from his parties. Witnesses who could link powerful men to his island. Prince Andrew of the British royal family. Bill Clinton, former president of the United States. Donald Trump, real estate mogul and future president. Alan Dershowitz, famous defense attorney. Les Wexner, billionaire founder of Victoria's Secret. Bill Gates, co-founder of Microsoft. Dozens of others. Some of these men admitted to knowing Epstein but denied any knowledge of his crimes. Others claimed they barely knew him. The photographs and flight logs suggested otherwise. The trial promised to be explosive. A public reckoning that would expose decades of abuse and the network that enabled it. On August 10, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his cell. The official report called it suicide. Epstein had hanged himself with a bedsheet. He'd been taken off suicide watch days earlier, despite having been found semi-conscious with marks on his neck just weeks before. The cameras in his cell malfunctioned. The guards assigned to check on him every 30 minutes fell asleep. The required 15-minute checks were falsified on the logs. Everything that should have prevented a death failed at once. The timing was remarkable. Just hours before his death, a federal court had unsealed nearly 2,000 pages of documents. Testimony from victims. Depositions naming powerful men. Evidence of a trafficking operation that spanned decades. Epstein died before he could be questioned under oath. Before he could be cross-examined. Before he could name the people who helped him. Within days, his estate filed paperwork to create a victims' compensation fund. The fund required victims to waive their right to sue anyone connected to Epstein. In exchange, they would receive financial compensation. No trial. No public testimony. No names revealed. Over 150 victims accepted the offer. Others refused, demanding answers instead of silence. But the silence was already spreading. In the years since Epstein's death, investigators have tried to piece together what he built. The more they dig, the stranger it becomes. His wealth, for example. When his estate was settled, it was worth $577 million. But financial experts still can't explain where it came from. His firm, J. Epstein & Company, had no visible client base. No documented investments. No trading records that matched his claimed fortune. Some investigators believe Epstein wasn't a legitimate financier at all. They believe he was a blackmailer. The theory goes like this. Epstein hosted powerful men at his properties. He introduced them to girls. He filmed what happened. Then he used the footage to control them. Money. Influence. Secrets. All traded in exchange for silence and protection. It would explain why his homes were wired with cameras in nearly every room. Why his island had a mysterious temple-like structure that no one can explain. Why so many powerful people visited him despite his conviction as a sex offender. If Epstein was blackmailing the elite, it would explain why he was protected for so long. Why prosecutors backed down. Why intelligence agencies allegedly told law enforcement to leave him alone. But we may never know the truth. Because the evidence disappeared. Hard drives seized from Epstein's Manhattan mansion were never fully disclosed. Surveillance footage from his island was destroyed or never recovered. Guest lists and flight logs were released only in heavily redacted form. Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's longtime associate and accused recruiter, was arrested in July 2020. She was convicted in December 2021 on 5 counts related to sex trafficking of minors. She was sentenced to 20 years in prison. During her trial, she refused to name other participants. Her defense argued she was being scapegoated for Epstein's crimes. Prosecutors argued she was integral to the operation, recruiting and grooming girls for years. But even at her trial, the focus remained narrow. Maxwell and Epstein. Two people. As if no one else knew. As if no one else helped. As if the network didn't extend beyond them. In late 2023 and throughout 2024, courts began unsealing more documents from the civil case brought by one of Epstein's victims. The documents contain names, accusations, testimony describing abuse and naming witnesses. Some of the names were already public. Prince Andrew, Alan Dershowitz, Jean-Luc Brunel, a modeling agent who died in a French prison before trial, also ruled a suicide. Other names were less known but still powerful. Businessmen, politicians, academics. But many sections remained redacted. Many names stayed sealed. Courts ruled that privacy concerns and lack of direct evidence protected certain individuals from being named publicly. The victims' advocates asked a simple question. If these men did nothing wrong, why are their names being protected? If they were merely acquaintances with no knowledge of crimes, why can't the public see the evidence? The court said it was to protect the innocent. The victim said it was to protect the guilty. And the sealed files remained sealed. What Jeffrey Epstein built wasn't just a trafficking ring. It was a network. A system. A machine designed to compromise the powerful and protect itself through mutually assured destruction. Everyone involved had something to lose. So no one talked. Until they had to. And even then, the talking stopped at Epstein's cell. Here's what we know for certain. Dozens of girls were abused. Dozens of powerful men visited Epstein's properties. Flight logs confirm it. Photos confirm it. Witness testimony confirms it. Here's what we don't know. Who else participated? Who else knew? Who filmed the abuse? Where are those recordings now? Who ordered prosecutors to back down? Which intelligence agency protected him, if any? Why did the cameras fail? Why did the guards fall asleep? Why was he taken off suicide watch? And the biggest question of all. Who benefits from his death? Because someone does. Every person named in those sealed files. Every person who flew to that island. Every person who stayed silent while children were abused. They all benefit from Jeffrey Epstein dying before he could testify. Dead men don't make deals. Dead men don't name names. And dead men's secrets stay buried unless someone digs them up. Some believe the full truth will never emerge. That too many powerful people have too much to lose. That the files will remain sealed, the names protected, the evidence destroyed. Others believe it's only a matter of time. That victims will keep speaking. That journalists will keep investigating. That eventually, the weight of evidence will crack the network open. But years have passed. And the network remains mostly intact. Prince Andrew settled a civil case with one of Epstein's accusers. No admission of guilt. No trial. No public cross-examination. Just money and silence. Alan Dershowitz has fought legal battles denying allegations, claiming defamation. Other names have surfaced and disappeared from headlines. Meanwhile, new evidence continues to emerge. In 2024, more documents were unsealed. More names appeared. More connections revealed. But the core questions remain unanswered. Why was Jeffrey Epstein protected for decades? Who made the decision to give him the plea deal in 2008? What did Alexander Acosta mean when he said Epstein belonged to intelligence? Which intelligence agency? Which government? And most haunting of all, if Epstein was running a blackmail operation, who has the recordings now? Because if those recordings exist, someone has them. Someone is watching. Someone knows exactly who did what and when. And if that's true, then Jeffrey Epstein's network isn't dead. It's just underground. On August 10, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in a federal prison cell. The official ruling was suicide. The circumstances were suspicious. The timing was convenient. His death ended the criminal case. It silenced the man who knew everything. It closed the door on a trial that would have exposed decades of abuse. But it didn't erase what he built. Somewhere, in sealed files and encrypted drives, in the memories of victims and the nightmares of witnesses, the truth still exists. The network that was never meant to be seen is still there. Hidden. Protected. Waiting. And the question isn't whether the truth will come out. The question is whether anyone with the power to reveal it actually wants to. Jeffrey Epstein died before he could name names. Before he could trade his secrets for a lighter sentence. Before he could bring down everyone connected to him. Some call that suicide. Others call it something else. So I ask you, when a man with that many secrets dies under those circumstances, do you believe it was an accident? Or do you believe someone made sure he'd never talk? How many truths died with him, and how many are still hidden?